My name is Adrian Dominguez. I have been working as an epidemiologist for approximately 30 years. I am now the Director of Informatics and Epidemiology for the Urban Indian Health Institute. I think a lot of people are surprised that the indigenous people are greatly impacted by this, by HIV and AIDS, that they are the population that continues to go up as far as like infections or mortalities. I think people just assume that everybody is doing well with the medication that exists now, right? And having access to PrEP. One of the things our institute tries to do is recognize some of the cultural activities, events that have a positive impact or influence on their population. It's not just talking about the bad things, but also identifying and showing the strength-based, resilient outcomes that we see in American Indian Alaska Native population. Unlike the other populations, other racial population or ethnic populations, we still continue to see HIV and AIDS is going up. And so the question was why does this continue to happen? Why is there an increase in this population, when all these resources are available to everybody, whether it be the access to services, whether it be access to PrEP? Why does this continue to be, something significant in American Indian Alaska Native populations? I think part of it has to do with the barriers to accessing services, not having insurance, not being necessarily close to a clinic that offers these services. Maybe these services are not offered on their tribal land. I feel as though there's a lack of urgency, to address this in American Indian Alaska Native populations, to provide them with resources that are culturally attuned to their being. You have to take a step back and understand that there may be some resistance to believing what we have identified as treatments. I think that the other thing that happens when we're looking at the data is that we don't necessarily classify people in the right racial categories. There's a lot of racial misclassification. American Indians and Alaska Natives get misclassified as white or Hispanic. The other thing that we find that is a problem is they, in general, whether it's local health departments or state health departments or federal government, don't necessarily put out reports. If you look at reports on HIV and AIDS, American Indian Alaska Native population, for the most part, are missing from those reports. And so we don't know, based off of those reports, if anything is working. We don't know what the true prevalence or incidence of or mortality is of the population. You have to understand as well that many of these people have some comorbidity, so it's important to understand that. And maybe the HIV or AIDS is not prevalent at the time in all the things that are going on. And one of the things that we identified as well is that a lot of the providers that provide services at these urban organizations throughout the US or providing services to indigenous people, those providers don't necessarily have a background in HIV or AIDS. So they will end up sending the person to a clinic that is probably seeing predominantly white males in their clinic and may feel unwelcome, and so they don't go back. So addressing stigma within the population, we did some videos, educational videos on that among American Indian Alaska Native population. We interviewed 3 people that were infected with HIV, and what I have learned from this is that how connected they are with their environment And that is really, really something that's important for them. There's people still dying of this. There's people that are still being infected. There's people that are not on treatment. There's people that are not on PrEP. There's just all these things. And until people stop becoming infected, until people stop dying of this, there's always going to be a need for a call to action.